Good afternoon. How you doing, Tim?
We get it. Good. How you doing?
Just a minute. All right, Tim. I'm here talking with Tim Bird. I know Tim. I've known him for a while. I know his family, especially his in-laws. But I'm just going to talk to Tim as if we don't know each other. It's a privilege to be with someone who inspires me. And Tim is a young man who I've sort of followed through the years that has been an inspiration to me. So, but I'm going to let you find out a little bit more about Tim. First of all, let me just say this: that Tim is a missionary. He's a missionary, and then think about that for a while. He's a missionary. Tim, tell us about. Tell us where you are a missionary right now, just right now, before we go back into how it all happened. Just tell about where you are right now in terms of your missionary work.
Okay, great. So, Pastor, let me say thank you just for having me on here. Really is a privilege, and I'm honored that you would even say such things. It's been encouraged just to encouragement to know you, especially through my wife's family, getting to know you all through them and being a part of the church. So, just thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. New Life family loves you.
Thank you. Likewise, likewise. So right now, so Naya and obviously Naya grew up at your church, and so we were in South Africa for a while, but now we're actually in Lusaka, Zambia. For the last 3 years now, we've been living there, doing work, doing campus ministry alongside of a local church there.
Now you saw Zambia. Just tell us where that is in relationship to South Africa.
Okay, so obviously South Africa is the tip of Africa. Just if you go directly north, it's Zimbabwe, and then above that is Zambia. And so, but it's about as the crow flies, it's about a 2 hour flight from Johannesburg to Lusaka. It's actually closer to fly there from Johannesburg to Lusaka than it is to fly from Johannesburg to Cape Town, South Africa. So, yeah, it's not too far.
That makes a lot of sense to us who haven't been there. let me before I back up a little bit, how long have you been a missionary to the continent of Africa, and have you been a missionary to any other continent besides Africa?
Oh, let me answer that in reverse. So I have not been a missionary full time anywhere else but Africa, and I've been on the continent since October of 2004. So 16 years.
Okay. Now we're going to back up. 16 years as a missionary. Where are you from, Tim, in terms of your upbringing?
It's that's a great question. Growing up, and I would always say I'm from North Carolina, but as you're a military kid, and that's what I am, you say, where your family is from.
Okay.
And so I grew up, literally all over the world, Europe, and born then in Europe, raised in Italy and Germany and different parts of the United States because my father was stationed everywhere. But home is definitely in North Carolina. That's where my heart is.
Okay. And you went to school all over. Did you graduate from high school or college in North Carolina?
I graduated high school in Virginia, but then moved to North Carolina. That's where I did my undergraduate work.
Okay. And what school did you attend?
UNC Charlotte, the University of North Carolina at Charlotte.
Okay. So now you are you from are your parents pastors or military people or church folk? Not church folk, but have they been involved with the ministry?
Yes, yes. So yeah, like I said, my father was in the military and he retired, but while he was in the military, he also pastored for a while. And he was associate pastor after he retired for several years. But now he does a lot of couples ministry, youth ministry, and things like that, prison ministry, things like that.
So you are a preacher's kid, basically.
Yes, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. with a military spin on it too. So you can imagine
Yeah,
that.
we have to dress you up and salute you with the cross symbol.
Oh, I'll take. Oh, that's fine.
Okay, so you went to high school, I mean, in Virginia, but you finished college in what year did you finish college?
2004.
Okay, now if I'm doing my math, you've been a missionary since 2004. You finished college in 2004. What was your major in college? I know they didn't have a course called missionary.
No, that is they did not. That how I got into ministry is a whole nother conversation. Well, might be this conversation, but
It's this conversation. What was your major in college, though?
Actually, I double majored. I majored in English literature and African Studies.
Oh, okay. All right. So, your dad was in a pastor, and you grew up in church. When did you become Christian? Was it always a part of your life, or when did you make the decision that you want to serve the Lord full time and give your life to Him?
So, I mean, the Christian faith was always a part of my family's life. For me, growing up in the church and in my family, that's something that we did. No matter where we were on Saturday night, my dad used to always say, no matter where you are on Saturday night, Sunday morning, you're going to be in church.
You're
And
from a
so,
big family,
oh
brothers
yeah,
and sisters?
oh yeah. I grew up with 6, but now there's 9 of us. So yeah, there's a there's a lot of us. Um, and so yeah, I mean, we grew up that way. I think I would have always said I was a Christian. The first time I met somebody who said they were not a Christian, they weren't a Christian. I think I was 16. I told my dad, I was like, this guy said he's not a Christian. He's like, why are you so surprised? I'm like, isn't everybody a Christian? That's what
Uh,
that
as
was my
part of your
world.
life.
Yeah, that was, yeah. But when I turned 18 or 19, and I had just went off to college, UNC Charlotte. God really I had a unique season wrestling with my identity, who I was, what I was living for. God really began to work in my heart. And I realized I was not saved. I wasn't a Christian. I just
Mm-hmm.
knew a lot of Christianese. I knew a lot of Christian talk, and I knew what to do, but my heart was far from God, and the gospel hadn't really gripped my mind or my heart. And so
Mm-hmm.
I got saved my freshman year. Um,
Mm.
yeah, just before school had started, and yeah, just repented
All,
and believed, and that was it.
all those seeds that your parents planted,
Yeah,
grew. They blossomed.
I would definitely agree with that, because there was I was doing stuff. Let me tell you, Pastor, I was doing stuff I knew I should not have been doing,
Yeah.
but I was doing it anyway. And it came to a point where I had decided, like, either I'm going to be this or be this, but I can't say I'm. As I got older, I can't say I'm a Christian if I'm doing this. And so, God, I was just really convicted. So yeah.
Okay. But the seeds that your parents planted were good seeds that eventually fell on good soil, and somebody somewhere in your freshman year seemed like they watered some of the seeds that your parents had planted, and we have
That's right.
Tim the missionary. So now you're in college. You're majoring in a couple of things. One, African studies, and how did the missionary? How did that come about?
So I was involved with a ministry that I actually work for now, Campus Outreach.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. Even before I was saved, it was in my freshman year. I heard this group of guys talking about, we're here now. We got to reach out to freshmen and get them connected to our Bible studies. They were standing behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So I turned around, all upperclassmen. I didn't know any of them. I said, hey, y'all doing Bible studies? Like, what's up? How can I get, I'm trying to get right. Like, how can I, get into these Bibles? They were like,
Uh-huh.
it was not what they had planned, I promise you, because they're like, So anyway, they were doing some evangelism. I got connected with the ministry at that point, and there was a guy on my floor who would start leading Bible studies. He was connected to Campus Outreach, and yeah, I had just become a Christian before I met them, days before I met them. So when I heard them talk about Bible studies, I was like, I need to do whatever it takes to grow spiritually, you know. And so that's how I initially got started. And I will go to these summer projects with the ministry in Myrtle Beach. And so I went for about 2 years. But I had heard that they were going to Africa. And I was like, come on, man. Well, you can't, you teaching me about Jesus, but now you talking about going to Africa with Jesus. I was like, I'm studying this. I love this. I love God. I get to go to Africa. I said, how can I go to Africa? On a short-term basis. I wasn't trying to do long-term. That was not in my plan. But yeah, and going into my senior year, they asked me if I would be available to go on this project, cross-cultural project, short-term missions for about 2 months. I said, absolutely. I don't know how I'm going to pay for all of this, but I want to go to Africa for sure. And I ended up going, and there that God really just kind of showed me, really gripped me and kind of said, look, man, this is, it felt like I wanted to, I began to want to do that. I began to want to share. I already shared the gospel, I was already making disciples on campus, but I wanted to do it in a foreign context. That was even normal to me for some reason. But yeah, that's how I got connected.
Was there a language barrier? I know it was a cultural barrier, but was there a language barrier?
A little bit, but not as much, because I mean, there's so many languages that they speak in South Africa, and the main business language, especially in the learning language on universities, is English, at least at the universities that I was at. And so, yeah, most students spoke great English. If they didn't speak great English, they were pretty good, better than my Zulu. So we could get along just fine in conversation. So yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Now in 2004, South Africa, of course, had gone through the apartheid and all that. Now things, politically, how were things?
In 2004. Oh man, let me think back. I mean, it was obviously so Thabo Mbeki was president at the time, and it was a pretty stable, transition from him from Nelson Mandela to him, and he had it. But I think there's a season where he was actually trying to extend his stay in the presidency, and so the ANC, I don't know how political you want to get into it, but I mean, it was pretty stable at the time. He had done I think from
the African National Congress.
Yes, sir. So from my little vantage point, he seemed to do a good job economically, but he most of the locals would say he was, because he grew up overseas and he came back, he didn't really connect well with the locals. And so, but he was a great president in some regards. And so, but as the transition from him to Jacob Zuma a few years later, I think that some things begin to change just a little bit. But I think when I arrived, it was a pretty strong economy. Politically, the ANC was definitely the strongest party, and still is the strongest party in South Africa. So.
So South Africa is about what, 90% Black, somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yeah, about 90% Black, 7% white, English, Afrikaans, and then there's colored and Indian, something like that.
So you spent a couple months in Africa and you came back home. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I came back home, and I was like, I got to go back.
So you were smitten, but now when you were introducing Christ to non-believers, because I'm quite sure they have a lot of churches and ministries already over in Africa, as it would in America.
Yeah, absolutely. There's tons of churches, lots of different types of churches. But my goal, our goal at the time, was to help this ministry, Campus Outreach, actually get started. They had been there a few months before I actually arrived with the short-term team. So our job was to actually help them get to meet students. And so we were about 26 students on our team, which is a big team, for 2 months. And during that time, we shared the gospel with a lot of people. I had an opportunity to see some men profess Christ, and just saw the beginning of the ministry foundation with those men and women that we were meeting that summer of 2003.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that was just the beginning of that campus outreach and ministry. And as I was seeing them grow, my heart began to warm and say, wow, I want to actually see what happens. I want to learn how to make disciples was one thing, but then I also want to invest and pour my life out into other men and women. And I had opportunity to do that. And I wanted to continue to do that.
How were you received as an American, as an African American, and how are you received by the religious community, the pastors who are on ground, who've been there, the nationals? How are you received by them?
Today or back then, or it doesn't matter?
Well, initially.
Initially, I was received very well by the students. I mean, I was a little bit older than them. I was like one of the only black guy on the team, and we related well. Like when I was there, they remember me. I remember all of them. So there was a natural, deep connection that only later on I could begin to realize that my counterparts who were Caucasian or white American, they didn't have that same connection initially, or as deep or as fast as I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it was a unique experience for me to be able to connect so deeply, so fast with them. And because I had already studied a lot of their culture, as that was a part of my major. So I studied things in South Africa. I studied things throughout Africa. So I was very curious about everything.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know everything. And so that really opened up doors just for tons of conversations that would often lead to gospel conversations as well. So it was good. Church wise, I think, it was pretty good. I mean, there wasn't much different there. I was almost an anomaly. They weren't used to seeing a black dude, in missions for sure. Everybody else was just white. And so seeing me there is like, they thought I was African until I opened my mouth, and they were like, "Oh, you're not quite like us, are you?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm a little different."
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
I wonder, and I know this is getting off the topic now, but I wonder why we don't see African Americans as involved with foreign missionary work as we do white counterpart, young people. And I do know various churches have missions overseas in Haiti and places like that, in Africa, the Zion churches and stuff like that. But as a business, as a vocation rather,
right.
Why we don't see that?
That's a great question. I did some research on that a while back, trying to, I'd been there for several years, almost maybe 8 to 10 years. And I was like, where are we? It really began to sink in. We aren't there, There's a guy by the name of Jim Sutherland, and he is doing his PhD. He's been doing it for years, tracking African Americans in cross-cultural missions who are there for 2 years or more. And he says today there are roughly 300 African Americans who are in cross-cultural missions for longer than 2 years right now. So coming out of America, that would be like 1% of all, missionaries coming out of the United States is African American.
Could it be economics? Could be because you say you wonder where you're going to get the money from. Could it also be that that's not embedded in our churches when we're growing up? We are not told one day to be a missionary.
There's so much behind that. Like if we begin to unpack it, we just need a whole nother session because I think it's all of those things. I mean, historically, African Americans have a strong showing in cross-cultural missions historically. But there was a season when we weren't, as African Americans, actually allowed to go. They began to cut us off. And there was times we would apply to, mission agencies and they wouldn't allow us to go. There was that. And then also we have having our own issues, especially in the early 50s and 60s. You had Brown versus Board of Education. You had the civil rights movements. You had a lot going on. And the church here in the United States was the primary kind of,
trying to take care of home.
yeah, trying to take care of home, and so we already many of us were denied access to go overseas now. So there were, and then you have issues here. So you just kind of refocused your energy in your space to say, well, then we don't have all the resources that the agencies aren't sending us anymore. We were almost like, oh yeah, let's let them go and see how they do it. Now, then we can't send them. We have to send white folks. Okay. Then we have in our own issues, well, let's just focus on people here. Let's focus on the civil rights movement. And I do think some of it could have possibly, with all that happening, just got lost in, trying to take care we have more needs. We have less access to those things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, even today, like I was raised to support when I started ministry. I remember one pastor told me, he said, Tim, I can't support you. We got too many issues going on right here. And I was like, wow, but I'm like, I'm right here and I want to go there for the sake of the gospel, but he was just like, nah, we got to take care of stuff here. And
I would think that. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So it's been 16 years since you've been in Africa. Are you have a family over? Oh, you have a family?
I do.
Okay.
Blessed, beautiful.
Now I know this. I know the answer to this question.
Right.
Did you marry someone from Africa or America?
That's a common question. That is a common question. Being over there for so long, people want to know.
I know the answer, everybody. I already know the answer. But right. Go ahead, Tim.
I married someone from the U.S. My beautiful wife is from. Her father's military as well. She grew up in Fayetteville, and we met at UNC Charlotte, and became friends. And I moved over to South Africa, and she stayed. And she was teaching for about 4 years before we actually reconnected and started dating and got married a year after that. So, yep.
So what year did you get married?
2009.
2009. Mm-hmm. So, and she has joined you in the ministry in Africa.
Oh yeah, she's the best part of my ministry. I promise you that.
Okay. And how about family?
We have 4 kids. We have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and we just had a little baby girl. So 3 girls and a little boy. Little boy 6.
Okay. Be fruitful and multiply, as the Lord would say.
That's the goal.
Okay. Now, Tim, this is, I hope this is just one of many interviews we're going to do reference to your ministry. Now, I've heard of people been on the mission field for years and years and years. So you've been on the mission field basically 16 years. And you were in your mid-30s, I would assume, somewhere in that neighborhood. Is it been rewarding? Has it been rewarding for you?
Definitely. I mean, you always have to take into consideration what the cost is when you talk about reward. And I there were plenty of costs, but I would hands down, I would say it has been rewarding to see what God is doing in my own heart, my own life, and my family's life. But then in the indigenous people that we've met over the years in South Africa and now in Zambia, they're seeing the fruit of the Holy Spirit working in their lives, seeing people come alive spiritually and walk with Jesus and help others begin to disciple and walk with Jesus. And so seeing that replicated over and over again to the point where I'm no longer needed in South Africa. I'm like, you don't even need me anymore. Let's go somewhere else and redo this thing all over again. And so that's how we ended up in Lusaka. So yeah, it has been very rewarding and a joy to serve my friends and now people who are my family all throughout Africa, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you sort of, how long you been in the States now, this time around?
We've been here for about 8 months now, 9 months possibly. Yeah, about 9 months.
Since the pandemic started.
Yes, when wifey got pregnant, we say, we didn't know Lusaka as well. And
Uh-huh.
so looking for a doctor, we didn't, and obviously we didn't know anything about a pandemic. And so we just said, let's hit reset and find our feet in the US. And so we've been here for about 9 months. We're about to getting ready to go back in a few weeks, hopefully, days now.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit about the finances. How do you get your, because you got 4 kids,
Right.
and so you have financial needs. So how is that
Mhm.
taken care of? And how can those who maybe listen to you be of assistance?
Okay, that's a great question. So everything that we do is faith-based. So all the funds that we get for our family to sustain myself, my wife, and our children is raised through donors, churches, individuals, businesses, organizations can give to our ministry, Campus Outreach Lusaka, and that'll help us. But not only that, that giving can also help our national staff. So we have hired Zambians now that we're in Zambia, and we try to help the ministry get started by developing and discipling them and equipping them, but then also helping the church fund some of their salary so that as the ministry grows, it'll grow at an even pace. So the church will actually fund a staff person, and then if we hire another staff person, I'll say, hey, I'll try to raise funds to help with that staff person, so that it won't be too much for the church at this season. And so that's where we meet in. And as the ministry grows, we want to continue something that model until the church can be able to support all of the staff, or we can create an indigenous model to help Africans raise funds, like similar to what we do.
Hmm.
So yeah, but yeah, that's how we do it. So people donate, people give uh, monthly, quarterly, annually, to our needs as a family and to our vision as a ministry, and
Hmm.
it's tax write off for them and a blessing and a meal for us. And so yeah.
Tell me about one of, I know you've had many, but just one that may stand out of a success story where you've seen somebody come from one level and go to another level that just sort of stuck on your heart. Give us just an example of
Oh
something that
man.
happened.
All right, let me pick one. There's okay. I'll tell you a recent one that stands out, I guess, right now because he's with me in Zambia. So there's a young man. His name is Linka. He's a South African, and let me step back here. Success is I've learned to measure success in different ways. Not everyone is the same, and not everyone has the same needs. And so to measure everyone by the story that I'm going to share now isn't fair. But there's been a lot of success, a lot of fruit, a lot of faithfulness, a lot of transformation of hearts and lives that I won't even share here. But I'll just share one story of a young man who is just coming to my mind right now, who's is a dear friend. So his name is Linka. I met him in 2011. He was a freshman. Some students who had come to from the U.S. to South Africa invited him to one of my Bible studies. They were American, and they invited him to my Bible study. I had already been reaching out to his friends, and so he shows up. Never met him before in my life, but I knew his friends. I invited the whole room. It was about 10 guys to a retreat that we're having, a little conference, and he's basically said he's not going, but all his friends went, so he said, okay, I'm gonna go. Let me just at least see what's going on. So he didn't want to go to the Bible study. He ended up at the Bible study. He wanted to go to the conference. He ended up at the conference. And it was at the conference that he heard the gospel. And he grew up in a Christian home as well. But he would tell you he had never really understood the gospel or cared too much for it.
Hmm.
And so he heard the gospel for the first time. We had a speaker there, and he realized, look, I could say I'm a Christian because I grew up in a Christian going to church, but it has never really gripped my life and heart, similar to my story. And so this young man at this conference, he became a Christian. Him and his friends joined a discipleship group that I was leading. Um, and so, it's short, long story short, he was one of the guys. His friends, some of his friends say, you know what, this isn't for me. But this young man was one man who said, you know what, this is for me and I want more of it. So for the next 4 years on campus, um, he would go, his life was transformed. His parents were struggling in different ways, but his life was being changed by the Holy Spirit more and more. And you could see the maturity, how he studied the word, how he was fighting to do well academically, how he was reaching out to the lost. This is a guy who didn't even want to be a part of what we're doing now. Now he's kind of leading the ministry in that regard. And so I would share stories about to all of our students about how campus ministries or campus movements historically have changed the world, whether it's the civil rights movement, whether it's the Haystack Prayer revival. Students, can change the world. And I shared about the Cambridge 7, how these British guys, went over to Asia and reached much of Asia with the gospel. And he was like, why are you telling us about this? I'm not going to be a missionary. Well, he's a missionary now with me in Zambia. He's been there for about 2 years, and he's going to go back and be a director of resources for campus outreach back in South Africa. He's a bright dude. He's got a heart as gold, and he really wants to go to Thailand and to do ministry in Thailand. But he's going to come back for a season, finish up his degree in biblical studies, and then consider his future as far as doing missionary work in Thailand. So Link is a great testimony, man, of just faithfulness, perseverance, and servant heart like never before. So it's a good story for me to see somebody.
But that's the measure that I wanted you to the success. What did it do for you? Now, how does church play in this with the campus ministry? They go to church, they go to Bible study, but are there local churches that they attend on weekends or the local church that you attend? How does that play into it?
Absolutely. So our ministry is deeply connected to local churches. And so I'm on staff with our church in Lusaka, and I'm in charge of basically evangelism and discipleship on campuses. And so
is that a church that was started since you've been there, or a church that was already there?
Long church. Yeah. It's been there for years.
Okay.
And so we actually the church has been there so long. I took some students from South Africa on a missions trip to partner with this church in Lusaka, Zambia. That's how we got there. One of the ways that we got there. And so, yeah, the church is a huge part of what we do. We're not a parachurch. We're actually under the authority of a local church. And so everything that we do rolls through the elders of the local church, and they know what we're doing. And so our goal is to get students, not just in a Bible study, but connected to the local church, because we believe that's who God is coming back for. He's not going to come back for just, he's coming back for his bride, which is the local church. And so, yeah.
Theologically speaking, theology, a reference rather, what's your doctrine? We got different denominations, and you guys are not a denomination, but what's your basic doctrine? And is it Pentecostal? Is it evangelical? Is it Episcopal? Or is it just a combination of all?
All right. So I'm Reformed Baptist. Yeah, I'm Reformed Baptist. Yeah, I don't know if that you want more.
now for our listeners who don't quite understand that, they know what Baptist is. What's a Reformed Baptist?
Okay. So
how does that differ from missionary Baptists?
I can't tell you too much about missionary Baptist, so I can't tell you the difference, but I can tell you a little about Reformed Baptist. So I believe in, I would say I'll be Calvinistic.
Okay.
Yeah. And so believe in the sovereignty of God, that God is sovereign. And I honestly, if I say these things, I think there's a lot of people who probably be more Reformed than they think they are. They may not know, but they know what Reformed doctrine is. When I say God is sovereign, God is in control, like, oh yeah, I believe that. It's like, well, we'll say that we're depraved. No, we're born in sin. So, oh yeah, nobody's perfect. Yeah, we all born in sin. So Yeah, just Reformed doctrines, beliefs that God is sovereign, God is in control, um, unlimited or limited atonement, unconditional, yeah, all those,
The deity of Christ, the salvation by grace through faith.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're all reformed. Yeah. Okay. All right, Tim. I got a million more questions to ask you, but we're going to do another segment, a couple more segments at a later time. But for those persons who want to support ministry, sometimes the Bible tells us we can't be the shepherd, but we can get the shepherd's crown. We can't be the missionary, but we can get the missionary reward by supporting the missionary. So for those persons who may be interested in lending you support as you prepare to go back to Africa to witness and to share the gospel, how can they get in contact with you? How can they give to your ministry?
Great. So you can actually go to coserve.org, COSERVE.org. And you can just you can find staff and look my name up, Tim Bird, and you can just click on that information. It'll tell you about Lusaka. It'll tell you about how you can support us and give to our ministry. It's really quite simple once you get on the website. So that's coserve.org, and just you go to give and then look up staff Tim Bird.
Okay. And they can share with you. And the monies that they give will go to the furtherance of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's right. Amen.
Okay. And you cannot beat God given, as the old folks would say. Now, right. While you're over in, just a couple more questions on this segment. While you're in Africa, and you are a local church, are you doing any preaching from the pulpit, or are you just a Bible study and witnessing and sharing the gospel and leading people to Christ and discipling those who've been led to Christ? Or are you also able to do sermons?
Yeah, I'm mostly the latter. I focus mostly on evangelism and discipleship, life on life ministry and things like that. We have a lot of solid preachers in our church. So what I love to do, so they take the pulpit, and I'm happy with that because I love hearing them. What I love to do is get face to face with somebody across a coffee table or on the dorm or on a soccer field or whatever it is, and get to know them and begin to share the gospel with them in front of a Bible. And so my passion isn't always to preach. I haven't preached since I've been in Zambia, except for maybe smaller occasions, not necessarily at a Sunday service, but smaller teaching options. But yeah, so my goal is to stay focused. I did a lot of things when I was in South Africa, and sometimes those things can keep you really busy. And so I really wanted to, as we're starting the ministry, especially, is to train and equip my staff to do the work so that as they're growing, they're able to help students do the same thing. And so my focus has mostly been on the campus, life on life, small conversations and stuff.
Yeah, I think David Jeremiah and people, great people used to be missionaries. A lot of missionaries over the years have always, in their waning years, have come back to the States to pastor. Has that ever been a desire of yours?
Let me just make sure I get you right. You said old missionaries. I just want to clarify.
Older. I had a professor in college, Tarkerton, and he was, at the time, he was an older man, and he had been in the mission field for like 25 years. And we were talking. He said, "Well, after a length of time, I just wanted to come back and pastor. I guess he didn't run out of steam, but he just wanted to settle back. I guess that's what it was."
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about it in different, not necessarily because I've gotten older. I thought about it just because of where we were in transitional periods. I often want to be open to what God is doing in my heart and my life. And so my wife and I have thought about, if we were to come back, what we would do and things like that. And so that is something that we've talked about, but it's not something that we're thinking to be anytime soon. I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Tim, it's been an honor talking to you. It really has.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. I wanted next time we talk, I want to just know a little bit more about how you go about setting up shop and some of the interactions you have. Those are interesting stories because what's the dominant language of Zambia? Is it English?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if you were setting me up for next session or
Yeah,
okay.
well,
Yeah.
I'm just asking you that now.
Yeah. It is. Actually, it is. And they speak, most of them speak better English than me. I promise you. Their English is fire. It's like,
Uh-huh.
anyway, yeah, they speak multiple languages there for sure. But uh, the Zambians are great communicators. And so that's one of the reasons why I enjoy listening to them preach, because it's just, I mean, it's just phenomenal. It
Are
really
they, are
is.
they you say they were sort of surprised in a African American missionary, but do they have a lot of questions they ask you how it is in America? And of course, news get out about certain things that happen in America. Do they come to you as if you're the expert?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I've been over, is to be honest with you, I've been in Africa for so long. A lot of them know more about what's happening in the US than I do. And so I'm like, who are you talking about?
Uh,
That new rapper that came out. I was like, oh yeah. Let me Google him and let you know what I think. I don't know, man. So yeah, I mean they do. I mean, much like we would ask somebody, if you meet somebody from another country, you ask them what's their country like, so
yeah,
now they're automatically an expert, so
yeah.
they know more than us. So yeah, I get that a lot. And so there's some certain questions I'm already prepared to answer
Okay.
as I'm
Is,
getting
is
to know a
is
person.
America the light on a hill uh, where people just want to come at least once?
um I guess it depends on where you are. It hasn't been the greatest in the last few years for different reasons, number of reasons, and that could be another conversation. But I
Yeah.
guarantee you this, Pastor. I guarantee you this, no matter how bad it's been here in the United States, for a lot of my friends in Africa, no matter how bad it's been in the US, they will always say, I'll take America.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
just to give you context.
What message would you give to anyone who's listening, who's considering wanting to maybe be a foreign missionary? What message would you give them? A young person now, or what would you say to them?
I would say in Mark chapter 8, Jesus is talking to his disciples and his followers. And he said, if anyone will follow me, he must deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow me.
Okay.
And then he asked us a very serious question. He said, what does it profit to gain the whole world and forfeit your soul? And so for a young person who is considering missions and ministry, they would probably have to give up some things, some dreams or aspirations, opportunities, even like I did, like many people have, for the sake of Christ and the gospel. And I would say the same thing that you asked. I would say what I said earlier when you asked me, is it worth it? I would say it's worth it every time. It's worth
Amen.
it every time.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay. Any parting words to those of us who are on this side of the river? Any words to us? Any encouraging words?
uh yeah, I would say in this season that I've been in the US, and I haven't been in the US in a long time, this long for sure. And it's been a very tough year for everybody. I can't imagine somebody who just say this has been a great year. But I would say to those of us who are still alive, and you're still breathing, you have something to celebrate, and you have something to find joy in. And if you don't know, if you saying to yourself, you don't know what that is, then I would invite you to know the person Jesus Christ, because he is enough to celebrate in the midst of COVID, pandemic, political tension, racial tension at its highest it's been in a very long time. In the midst of it all, if you have a Savior like Jesus Christ, and your heart belongs to him, you can still rejoice because you know who you are and where you will be for eternity. So, yeah.
Those are words that we're in with. He couldn't have said it better. We have eternity with him. God bless you, brother. Thank you. And we'll be looking for our next interview very soon.
Bless you too, Pastor. Thanks for having me.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.